Okay, yeah, no problem.
Sure.
Okay, so it's 11:30 now, so we can get started. Thanks everyone for coming, and without further ado, I'll let Michael take it away.
Thanks, Kyle. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for coming out for today's session. As you know, it's for effective listing presentation. Now, here's the way we'll be approaching it. We're going to have me lecturing for about an hour, and then there's another half hour after that for questions and having a chat. If you feel during the 1 hour lecture, if there's something time sensitive, you feel compelled to ask a question, you can always just type it into chat for Kyle and he can just flag me if there's a question to be asked at the time. Otherwise, there's plenty of time for questions at the end. Now, we're going to be covering a listing presentation for residential real estate. Normally it's a 2 hour lecture. I would give it the Treb Auditorium. We're doing it in 1 hour. So it's going to be the fundamentals I'm covering today. And let me make it crystal clear. What we're covering would be the dynamics, the methodologies for any regular real estate market. We're not talking about during the pandemic. The pandemic has come, the pandemic will go. Also, I know we're having a Wild West market right now, multiple offers. You have a listing come out, boom, you get 17 offers. It sells for 140% over asking. We're just talking about during an average or a healthy market where you're going out and trying to put your best foot forward for doing an effective listing presentation. Now, to make the distinction, by the way, you have the text for this. It's been sent to you already, and we'll send you other material after the session's over that you might need. The distinction is that there are two factions or two categories for usually for a listing presentation. You have it where your sphere of influence or your client base will have referred you to somebody they know, and we call it a warm or a hot lead, where when you contact that person, the decision maker, there's a bit of an emotional or psychological bridge where somebody they know and trust has already vouched for you for reputation, credentials, ability. This still has its own challenges of being able to get them signed up. But usually when you are referred, any of the veteran agents listening in today will acknowledge that if it's a referral, you can usually just go in, meet with the people, build a semblance of rapport, go over the basics of their needs, address an simple overview of your services. And it's more of an assumptive close usually, where because you've been pre-sold to them, you're not giving them a short shrift or a disservice, but you would walk in with a bit of an assumptive close, not being arrogant or cocky, but just with the quiet assurance or confidence that you are being picked to represent them unless you're told otherwise. So you'd be pulling out paperwork, starting to fill it out, chatting with them, saying, well, would Thursday be a good day for the videographer, and about open houses or whatever else. And as if it's a given that you're in an agency relationship and they're starting to give you instructions and that you are proceeding accordingly to fill out the documentation. Now, you do that in a subtle fashion. You don't want to be too overt, but that's where you're referred. Now, for today's discussion, we're going to be talking about the more atypical example where you're not referred by somebody, where you haven't been vouched for. It would be that you're working in a market area, you've been working for a period of time, you have some sense of notoriety in the region, signs in the area, you pamphlet the area, they've seen some social media indications that you work the market area. And then one day you get a call or an email, or they filled in a box of the fields to inquire, saying, like, call us. And you contact this person where they're saying, we're thinking of selling. We're currently in the process of doing our due diligence. We're interviewing different brokerages. We'd like to hear what services you have to offer. So that's the example we're talking about, not where you've been referred, but where you don't have a one-up advantage. You're just going in cold on even footing, where there could be an agenda there, of course, where they say that they call you out to their property, pick your brains for service and price, kick you to the curb and go with their niece or daughter-in-law who's been in real estate all along. But barring that calamity, let's just say it's ostensibly what it appears to be, that these people have lived there for years. They don't really know a realtor in particular. And now they're thinking of selling. So they're sniffing around, looking around different companies, deciding which one would best serve their needs. Now, I'm a big fan of stats. You'll hear a number of stats today. NAR, National Association of Realtors, indicated that in that context, where if there's no agenda and the homeowner doesn't really have a relationship with a realtor and they're shopping brands to see which one to go with to sell their property after living there for 17 years, they tend to interview probably 3 different brands on average. Now, in some cases, you could have an easygoing, laid back type of consumer that might interview one realtor, be suitably impressed and sign on the dotted line. Or the polar opposite, you could have some consumer that's from Missouri and so cynical and doubting they want to interview 7 or 8 different companies. But the median average tends to be several, say 3. So that means that you're one of 3, one of several vying for the business, jockeying for position to be the realtor of choice. So think about it. The fundamentals would be that means if you're one of 3, one of several, then it begs the question, do you have to be, now if these are the other 2 here and this is you vying for a position to be the realtor of choice, as far as the perception of the consumer, do you have to be this much better than the other 2 wannabes? Or if after the interviews and comparison, if the consumers, the homeowners, the decision makers perceive or come to the conclusion that you're even just a shade more innovative and progressive and professional than the other 2 people, do you think that more than likely they'll tip in your direction if they are thinking that you're just a shade better than the other 2? And the answer is yes. So you have that competitive edge, that unique selling advantage where they perceive a benefit to them about wanting to tip in your direction. And we're going to talk about today about how to put your best foot forward in that regard. So it's a matter of percentages or edges. I find it reassuring. You don't have to be the end all and be all, perfection personified, walk on water. They're looking for the sandals on your feet. You just have to be better than the next guy or the next person. And then you'll tend to get more than your fair share of business. The analogy usually in sports would be professional baseball. When you see this, the average players in baseball, say they hit the ball, contact the ball for 3 times out of 10 times up at bat. But the superstars, people get paid 10 times the money, $1 million endorsement contracts. They only maybe hit the ball 4 times out of 10. So they only are a bit better hitting it, more proficient to hit the ball or contact it 4 out of 10 compared to 3 out of 10. And that 1/10 of an advantage gives them 10 times the income. Same parallel with real estate. All your top realtors in your market area, nothing magical about them. They just have a host of systems they work, and they tell a good story, and they can show a good track record about what they're doing when they go out to suitably impress any decision makers. And we want to build you up to that level of comparison. Now, as I said, you've got the text for the verbiage. Now, if you're one of 3 and you're talking to them on the phone, it takes a bit of courage, a bit of gastitudinal fortitude. But the experts point out that if you feel you have a really good story to tell, okay, that you really are good at putting your best foot forward, and you really can exemplify about how you're going to get them top dollar in a reasonable time frame, the fewest headaches, and you come across in a very professional, polished manner, then you may want to try to orchestrate trying to be first of the 3. Now, you can't always organize this. It could be a bit awkward, but if you're on the phone, they're saying, yes, I'm meeting with a couple of other companies. And you say, well, let's look at our schedules. And when are you meeting with the other companies? Okay, let's look at my schedule here. And if you feel you've got a really compelling, impactful story, you may want to try to jockey for position to go first of the 3 if you can. Sometimes it's not possible, but you might want to go first of 3. Now, this flies in the face of years ago. In real estate, you very much wanted to be the last of the 3 to go in. And what happened back when the world was young, back in the dinosaur days, is that if you were one of 3, simply put, the consumers would have the first realtor come out, do their song and dance presentation. They thank them, take a few notes, kick the realtor out. Next night, next realtor comes in. They do their little recitation. Consumers ask a few questions, take notes, thank you, kick the realtor out. And then the third night, the third and final realtor would come in of the 3, do their little presentation and chat. And at the end of the third and final interview, after all the research was finished, the partners, the 2 consumers, it could be a sole owner, but let's just say it's 2 spouses or 2 partners. They look at each other and say, well, okay, we finished all our research, and well, sign us up. And the third person, the last one in, would win by default because they just happened to be there live and in person when the interviews, the research was finished. I guess Woody Allen was right when he said that 80% of success is just showing up. Well, that's fine if you just fly by the seat of your pants and you don't have an agenda or a blueprint of what to address while you're on the appointment and you're just hoping for the best. But if you really are persuasive and you can have more of an impactful message put forward, then NAR, National Association of Realtors, has determined that if you go first, you have a 70% chance of securing the listing, and the other 2 wannabes don't even get a chance up at bat. And I can share language with you as to how to counter that objection at the end of the day. Well, we still have a couple of other interviews arranged. So just the first thought is you may want to try to go first if you feel that you've got a beneficial story to tell. So let's get into some of the meat of this. While you're still on the phone call, as you're saying, yes, that's be great. Glad to meet with you on Thursday night, 8 o'clock. The one key question you want to ask is say, please, may I ask, okay, your address, etc., your email. May I ask, when we meet on Thursday, are all the decision makers involved in the process? Will everyone be in attendance at that meeting? Will everybody be at the meeting on Thursday? Because if you don't ask that one simple question of clarification, there's nothing worse than doing all the work, showing up, putting your best foot forward to one partner, and you could do the best presentation in the world, and then they say, well, sorry, but my partner, she's out at a meeting, wasn't available, conveniently unavailable, and we're going to have to talk about, we'll get back to you. And it's very difficult to just close to one person. So you're clarifying right up front, are all the decision makers involved in marketing of your property? Everyone who's making a decision on this, are they all going to be at the meeting on Thursday? And if they say, well, no, one would be busy, say, I like this. Very important. It's the largest investment you own in a lifetime. Very much in your best interest. We can arrange a time where all parties are there so I can answer any questions anybody might have so that you're all in a position to make an informed decision. Do you see how that makes sense? And you nudge and cajole, try to orchestrate, steering it towards where all the decision makers are going to be there. That's your best bet. Now, when you get off the phone for that, you've got their email. You may want to, of course, send what's known as a pre-listing package. Now, this has been around forever. A lot of top agents use this, although it's funny, I've been all across Canada teaching thousands of realtors over many years. And some people nod. Everybody's heard of a pre-listing package, but then when you really scratch at the fabric of their methods, it ends up a lot of people haven't bothered putting one together. Now, what it is very simply is that a pre-listing package is all about who you are as Me Incorporated, certainly under the auspices of this wonderful broker international realty firm. So it's a powerful partnership for our brand. But what you send in the email is that you're outlining all the goodwill of who you are as a real estate entity, track record, credentials, awards, success. You do not get into anything to do with your marketing plan. Do not send prices ahead of time. Do not send anything about your marketing, the steps of your marketing plan ahead of time. That's for Thursday night at 8 o'clock. What you send in your pre-listing package is just information fleshing out who you are as a real estate entity for the goodwill of you as a real estate brand, mainly usually track record, acknowledgement, credentials, etc. Now, in the old days, an example of that would be where you'd send off little scanned copies of, say, reference letters. But far more persuasive is, of course, if you could have little video vignettes of satisfied clients. Now, I know they can be awkward and difficult to get, but the rule of thumb is usually after you have put your latest deal together and the evening where you've sold it as a listing agent for over asking in 3 days and your sellers are ecstatic. And usually you might sit there and have a celebratory drink after the paperwork has been put all together and put to bed that evening of putting the offer together. And you say, you're happy with the service. Oh, you did a great job. Say, it really helped me a lot. If you would be kind enough, if I could just get a little testimonial. Usually we just take a little friendly 15-second video vignette, where you could just maybe give me a personal testimonial. Would you mind? And usually if they're in a buoyant, upbeat mood, sometimes you can catch them in the right mood that they'll be willing to do that. So that's helpful if you can get any little video vignettes, select cross-section of them, where, for example, if you work Woodbridge, Ontario, and then you've got where you send ahead of time, if the appointment's in Woodbridge, Ontario, you send a selection of, say, 4 or 5 little video testimonials. And on the screen, it shows John and Mary Henderson, Woodbridge, Ontario. And it shows that they're in the market area where you're going on the appointment. That can be pretty persuasive because, let's face it, human nature, if you're the decision maker at the house and you receive scanned letters saying, oh, this is a great realtor, or you can click and watch little video 20 seconds a piece of a real life human being looking you right off the video screen, the computer screen, saying, yes, this realtor is really good. She did a great job. Then obviously it's more persuasive and more impactful if it's a video. So you might want to see if you can get your hands on that. And you would then, of course, send it to them ahead of time, that hope you have a chance to just review this before we meet on Thursday. Now, between the call coming in on Thursday, coming up, some of the newer agents in your zeal might just slap together a quick CMA. But please, if you get a call on a Tuesday to come out on Thursday, and in your eagerness, you do a CMA on Tuesday night, please have the wherewithal that by Thursday, late afternoon, just on the lip of the appointment, please do an update on CMA, because 48 hours is a lifetime in this business. You don't want to walk in with a 2-day-old stale dated CMA of recent sales, and then they say, well, this one just sold last night. How much is that? And you're saying, I don't know. So obviously you want a fully up-to-date CMA. Now, tied into that, if you're going to have a fully up-to-date CMA, and yes, I know we're all into our technology. We love it. It makes it so easy. During the pandemic for the last 2 years, nothing but Zoom meetings and getting people in DocuSign and all the rest of it. But human nature doesn't really change. Before you go on that appointment on Thursday night, and I know right now during this buoyant market, properties are selling in 2 days for over asking, and there's not much time to play with. But I reminded you up front, this is just generally on an average balance market. Between the call coming in on Tuesday, on Thursday, if there are 1 or 2 properties still listed for sale on that street, just as an example that you're going to, if you're going to 34 Mayborn that evening on Thursday, and there are a couple of other properties listed still on MLS currently available on Mayborn, don't just go by virtual tour of clicking and looking at photographs. Take the time from your busy schedule to go book a quick little inspection appointment and go and look at those properties live and in person. Because if you're purportedly the neighborhood professional, you work that area, you know it like the back of your hand. When you show up on Thursday, you can bet that more than likely during your chit chat discussion, the sellers, the partners, the owners might say to you in passing, oh, that one that's been up for a couple of weeks, have you seen it? And they allude to the property just down the street that's for sale. Instead of being the type of realtor that looks in the eye and say, oh, yes, I've seen it. But meanwhile, that's a white lie, because your version of seeing it is that you saw the pictures on a computer screen. Just on the law of vibration, they might twig to the idea that you're telling a bald-faced white lie. No, better to take 20 minutes of your time, go in and take a look at it. And they say, have you seen that one down the street? Yes, of course. And you can talk about its pluses and minuses, its deficiencies, etc. And it rings true that you've been through it. And of course, you've been through that. You go through every piece of listed real estate in that market area. You leave no stone unturned. So please, it's the little touches like that that you want to go and look at all the competition so you can speak knowledgeably about it. So you get your ducks in a row. You've sent the pre-listing package. You have inspected other properties. You've got all your ammunition. Now you show up. Now this is during a regular market where there's no pandemic. You're allowed to show up in person. You show up at the appointed time. Please be on time. Nothing worse than a realtor either knocking at the door 6 minutes early or 7 minutes after the hour. Go right by what's on your phone. Right at 7. If it's 8 o'clock or 7 o'clock that they ask, then you're at the door at 7 o'clock, right on the button. Smart business professional. It's better, they say, NAR says, better to be a shade overdressed than underdressed. Always dress professionally. Now, it's a little hard to describe this over the video, but if it's a condo, you'd be ringing from downstairs and going up in the elevator. That's a different matter. But if you're arriving at a detached piece of real estate, here's the tried and true little strategy. Remember, they've never met you before. This is the first magic moment, meeting you for the first time. So you walk up the front steps, you ring the doorbell, knock at the door, and you take a half a step back so you're not too close to the door. Nothing worse than people opening the door for that first magic moment of greeting you, and you're a little too close to the door where you're virtually only 3 inches away saying, hi, how are you? No, you want to give them the physical space. So as they're on the door, you smile, introduce yourself. Also, if you're carrying a leather pouch or a valise of any type, have it just tucked down to the side of your body under your, say, left or right arm, just tucked close to your body so it looks unobtrusive and not too daunting. Don't hold a valise or a briefcase out in front of you. Do not hide it behind your back as if you're trying to hide something. But also do not carry any type of a carrying case that's too large in scope. You should be able to have everything, tablet, all your materials for laser measurement, whatever else, all within the confines of just a simple leather pouch with a flap that you keep tucked unobtrusively under one of your arms. Studies show that if you knock at the door and they open the door and they see you for that first magic moment, they look down and they see you're carrying this large travel case, valise type of carrying bag. Psychologically, it scares the hell out of them because they think instinctively, well, how long is he going to be here? I mean, is that his luggage? I mean, is he staying here for 3 days? And I'm not joking. It really scares them if they see you carrying. Are we going to be watching a vacuum cleaning demonstration? Do not show up with any large type of carrying case. You can carry all your accoutrements just in a simple leather pouch that's tucked under your arm. So you smile, introduce yourself, step in, take shoes off to show respect for the property, unless you feel you need them on to go out in the backyard and walk around the perimeter of the property, but just to show respect. Now, use hello, introduce each other. They, of course, the first usual step is that after social niceties, they want to take you on the tour around through the property. Now, You want to, after going through the property, you want to come full circle back. And where do you want to conduct your listing presentation? You want to conduct it at the kitchen table, or maybe the dining room table if necessary, but you want to do the presentation at the kitchen table. The reason being that in all households, universally speaking, from any background, any ethnicity, any type of demographic, most families, couples, people living together will have all their important discussions, usually over coffee, tea, juice, smoothie, sitting at the kitchen table. This is known as a safe island. Most people, human nature, will sit there at the kitchen table talking about the drama of life, of making big decisions in life. They're well accustomed to making decisions at that table. They feel masterfully in control sitting there at that realm. So you very much want to conduct the presentation at the kitchen table. How do you secure or maximize the chances for doing the presentation at the table? Well, as you've just walked in the front door and they're about to take you on the tour through the property, you just politely say, oh, let me just put my materials down. And you walk through the hallway to the kitchen without asking for permission. You just put your carrying case down on the kitchen table, thereby visually designating or denoting, after we walk around, I just assume this is where we're going to be sitting. Now, if it's cluttered dishes, glasses, you may have to sit and put it over at the dining room table, but hopefully you can manage to secure that as the spot for doing your presentation. So now you're walking around through the property. They're giving you the tour up through the stairs, through the bedrooms, out through the back, the mud room, looking out the backyard. You can make your own judgment as to aesthetics and whether staging is necessary, etc. Complimenting anything sincerely that you think lovely about the property. Now, usually, while you're taking the tour of around through the house property, the homeowners will ask you some little issue. For example, at the back of the house, they'll say, well, this was the nursery years ago, but we think we should probably repaint it. Or at the back walkway, there could be, say, oh, that area rug, or the hallway rug, that strip of carpeting, we were thinking of replacing, it's a bit worn. Or that screen door is torn at the back, we were thinking of replacing that. What do you think? Now, if they ask you about some minor issue about painting a room, let's use that one as an example. You're at a back part of the house and you're standing there in the doorway, the door frame, and you're looking in, and they're just showing you the room and say it's a little dingy. We were thinking about, brighter lights and painting this in a lighter tone. That'd probably be helpful. What do you think? Now, there's an old trainer in real estate known as Floyd Wickman, very successful, long retired. I've met him a number of times, very charismatic fellow. He has a very good two-word answer. If any of these decision makers ever ask you for your sage advice about what do you think about cosmetic aesthetics, we were going to do this or that, and it's some minor thing. You don't say, oh, that's a great idea, or that should really help. You don't get into words like that. You just, as they ask the question, say, we were thinking of painting the baby's room. You just look around the room for a moment, you look back at them, you nod judiciously, just in an agreeable manner, and you, in a half whisper voice, you say to them, almost as if you're intimating it to them, you say, I would. So just make it clear that you heard that. You just look around, you smile a little bit, you just nod, and you go, I would. And they like to hear that type of thing. It reinforces they're on the right track. And I think if some of you are debating, well, if the two partners were debating whether to do it, does that alienate the other partner that maybe didn't think it should be done? No, it doesn't work that way. Usually, if you agree with them and sanction that that's a good idea by simply, I would, giving your quiet little nod of approval, when you walk out that night, hopefully with the listing, they turn to one to the other and say, see, she said it was about the baby's room. She said I was right. We're on the right track. And they like the fact that you reconfirmed it. So now if they say to you, we were thinking of adding a $90,000 extension to the back of the house to this old resale property, I mean, would that help us for our sale price? No, I wouldn't. So if it's just some minor cosmetic thing that would cost a few $100s and add to the aesthetic of the property, you just say, oh, I would. And they like that type of rapport building. So you walk back, you sit down at the kitchen table. Now, to be clear about this, I'm just painting the picture that it's two partners. It could be a sole owner, but just bear with me. Let's just say it's two people, two partners. If that's the case where it's two decision makers, have them sit to the one side of the house, of the table, just across from you or to the side of you, where you are doing a visual presentation, probably on your tablet, okay, iPad, whatever, where you're doing the presentation towards them, like I'm going to show you in a short bit. The reason I'm saying this is in commission sales, if you have two decision makers, there's nothing worse in our business than sitting down at a table with the two decision makers where one sits to the one side of you, the other person sits to the other side of you, and you end up doing a Wimbledon routine where you're looking back and forth. And as you're making an impactful point with the one decision maker and they're nodding dutifully with you, their spouse, the other partner of them, is behind your back, flagging and waving to their partner, saying, shaking their head as if giving them a signal. No, just have them sit together as one decision-making unit, as two human beings under the umbrella term of they are one unit making one decision about this property they own together. But the reason you want them to sit together is that you are going to show them on, say, the screen, say, of a tablet, a presentation showcasing your services. Now, the reason you're going to show them on a tablet, something on a screen, and years gone by, it could be just in a binder, it could be on a color paper of a chart. But nowadays, of course, you would have a nice little PowerPoint possibly where you're just on the screen and just touching and moving through it. For example, if you show them anything on screen, it is 73% more convincing psychologically than if you just showed them verbally. You see, I'll give an example. They've known through studies that if you show anybody anything in writing, just that, it is 73% more convincing psychologically than if I just told you that statistic verbally. And by me writing on the screen, this proves my point. You're probably more likely to believe it if it's in print compared to if you just hear the piece of information verbally. So please keep that in mind. Now, the text or the template that we have with International Realty Firm is very good. It's a good overview of different methods and services. You can work with that in tandem. This I've been teaching for years at TREB is just another avenue that you can take. You can amalgamate the two together and blend it, morph it into the one effective type of campaign. So they work well in conjunction with each other. So why don't we, Kyle, if you can just put the chart up on the screen at this point. Hopefully, I just want to show what we're talking about here. Okay, we just need to reduce it a bit. Okay, now, please let me explain this. I don't want you to underestimate what you're looking at. This is really brilliant in its simplicity. Okay, over the years, as I alluded or mentioned, a lot of realtors had multi-page reports and they're flipping through all this data. And to be blunt, if it's overkill with too much information, the consumers are sitting there and trying to pay attention and nodding dutifully and listening, but they become psychologically detached because they can't absorb it. It's too overwhelming. Top agents across Canada, when they've seen this chart, they practically start salivating at the mouth because they understand they love the simple message on this one cue card chart. Now, this is just clip art, but imagine you can take this template. I created this, but you have my permission. Use at the top, it says marketing plan for 34 Elm Street. So if you're going to 84 Mayborn, as I said earlier, then at the top it would say marketing plan for 84 Mayborn Avenue, your name, International Realty Firm, services I provide, and then instead of that little clip art just for today's class, have a color picture of the property. So never mind Google Earth and all the rest of it. Actually, if it's nice weather, go by and take a photo, crystal clear, laser sharp focused color picture of the house, scan it in, and have the picture of their house right in the middle, their bungalow or their backsplit right there in the center. Now, keep in mind what you're looking at. On this one chart, this one page overview, there they have at the top marketing plan. So it's a personalized marketing plan for their exact property, your name and name of your brand, the company, the picture of their house. So talk about a personalized marketing plan. Now for this teaching today, these titles are already all there, but I would recommend that you do a little PowerPoint presentation where as you just tap the mouse, these titles aren't necessarily there yet. They see marketing plan for and the picture of their house there in color. And as you start to verbally describe the benefit pictures, and as you tap the mouse, each of these titles pops up. So finally, when you fill it all in, this should take about maybe 20 minutes to give an overview of this presentation. You want to showcase how you put your best foot forward, painting a benefit picture for each of said services. And the beauty is at the end of the 18-20 minutes, as you finish this presentation, if the real picture of their house is in the center, now here we just have the black lines emanating around the perimeter or the circumference of the picture. I would recommend in your PowerPoint, make them yellow lines. Those black lines should be converted to yellow. So as you go through this, and at the end of it, you have rays of sunshine shooting out from the picture of the house. So it's more warm in connotation. And the beauty, think of this for the punchline, ladies and gentlemen. At the end of it, you've showcased it's encompassing 360 degrees around the entire circumference of the property, thereby visually denoting maximum exposure. I can assure you, unless your competition has taken this training, I would bet money that your competitor will show a menu shopping list of services, like a shopping list, and that's nowhere near psychologically as impactful as showing them a personal picture of their property. And by the end of it, all the titles are fully encircling the property with yellow rays shooting out, warm in connotation like sunshine, warm in connotation, and you've got all the titles. Now, please, I've got to caution you, only put the titles in of the services that you're willing to offer or to provide effectively. I see a comment down below. It's a really good template. Thank you, Ali. Appreciate that. Yeah, I get a lot of nice feedback from top realtors. I've had realtors that make $1 million a year. They love the logic of this because they know that it's a simple message to put forward. Everybody can follow it. It's one simple blueprint chart where people can just read through and they can understand it. And it allows you, see, you're nervous, even an 11-year veteran, you're trying to build rapport and trying to impress them. But you can draw a blank, but as you click the mouse, the next title pops up. It's a little cue card for you. Then when it pops up, you just have to have the wherewithal to remember, oh, that's right. I just need to paint a big benefit picture, for example, open houses, and you go into the spiel that you pre-memorize. So it does require that you have pre-memorized how to paint a benefit picture of each said service. Obviously, when it says internet down around 7 o'clock would be social media. So this is considered full service business model. You can't underestimate your competition. They would probably be offering full service as well, unless there's another business model, which even puts them in a weaker position. But for example, see, let me give you a real grassroots example of this. Okay, I live in Leaside myself. Now, I don't know if any of you are familiar with Leaside in around Bayview, Eglinton, in Toronto. It's a nice neighborhood. The one street in Leaside is Bessborough. That's the one street that everybody loves, would love to live on. Bessborough is a wider avenue, bigger homes, bigger lots. It's very upscale, nice cachet to it. So a lot of people living in Leaside would like to live on that street, or people moving into Leaside would prefer that, and they pay a fortune for that privilege. Now, if you're showcasing to your sellers as an example, let's say their house is on Bessborough. This is why I'm mentioning this to you. When it comes into about the just listed cards, a lot of realtors will say, yes, once you give us the go ahead, we're going to pamphlet the area. This is where the homeowners will think to themselves, they won't flag the realtor, but they'll think, well, the sign's on the lawn, it's on MLS, it's out there on realtor.ca. I mean, everybody will know about it anyway. And they disqualify some of these steps thinking, well, these don't have any impact. There's no merit to them. So you could just paint a little picture of them saying, you say, we get a lot of buyers for properties from this simple strategy. Once you give us the go-ahead, one of the very first steps we take, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, is that here are properties on Bessborough. Now, human nature, a lot of people living over on Randolph or McRae, living in Leaside, would have always dreamed about moving up to a dream property here on Bessborough. But think of it, what if those consumers living on those other streets have always dreamed of Bessborough as being their final destination? What if they don't happen to drive down Bessborough while we have the sign on lawn? What if they aren't currently looking on realtor.ca? How are they going to be made aware of this property? We've had many examples where we would then go and knock on the doors of those adjoining streets with these marketing pieces, promoting it where either that homeowner might be interested, or at the very least they might know somebody wanting to buy in the area on Bessborough, for example. And it's great word of mouth exposure, where very often we've had somebody on an adjoining street saying, oh, really? We've wanted to live on that street for years. Oh, at number 34, the one on the corner, gray and white house. Oh, my wife loves that house. And we end up getting the buyer by going and knocking on the doors and telling people on the adjoining streets, but we would have missed them in the search if we didn't flag them because they're not currently looking on realtor.ca. They didn't happen to drive down Bessborough because they take different routes to exit the Leaside area. So here's an example of leaving no stone unturned. You see how we're going to get more qualified showings by covering this avenue. So you paint this little picture, almost telling a story, and I'm using the example of a tie down at the end where you say to them at the end of the beneficial story, do you see how we're going to get more qualified showings by covering this avenue, pun aside, covering the other avenue? But you've painted a picture and you're asking a little tie down. Now, to be clear about this, over the 20 minutes of describing, say, 15 services, if you're going through 15 services, and you're painting 15 benefit pictures, please have the wherewithal. Don't do 15 tie downs throughout, because that's just going to, even the most unsophisticated consumer will say, what do you think I am, Pavlov's dog? Stop trying to program me. No, what we're recommending over the 20 minutes is you do 15 services, 15 benefit pictures, and intersperse as a spine along the whole thing, the occasional tie down, maybe 3 or 4 tie downs throughout, just threading it all together, where over 20 minutes, if you get the occasional tie down where you're getting them to agree, where they nod and say, yeah, that's good. And then about a few minutes later, you say, yeah, I can see that. And they nod in agreement. After getting conditioned of the habit and routine of over 20 minutes of listening to a beneficial campaign from you, and they of their own volition verbally acknowledging and agreeing, say, yes, that's good. Oh yeah, I can see that. Oh, that has merit. Over 18, 20 minutes of then getting into the conditioned habit of agreeing. Then at the end, when you close and ask for the listing in a very low-key, understated, consultative manner, it seems counterintuitive for them to recant and backpedal. So we'll know, because they've been agreeing all along. So it seems almost nonsensical for them to say no at the end of 18 to 20 minutes of agreeing with everything. So you've got to be subtle about it, where you're asking the occasional tie down. Now, this is all in your text, all the verbiage that we'll be sharing with you. Another thing I'd like to caution you about, you can paint benefit pictures for all of these different services. I don't really have time today to go into everything because of the 1 hour time constraint, but the one service in around the middle of your presentation when it comes to open houses, you don't just go into a benefit picture with that. It's the one service out of the entire chart where you say to the sellers, tell me something, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, how do you feel about open houses for the public? And you probe gently to get their opinion on what they think of open houses, because they might pipe up and say to you, well, we hate them, nothing but nosy neighbors and tire kickers. They seem like a waste of time. That's where you don't play white knight and try to defend it. You acquiesce, allow them a symbolic victory. You say, you're right. Because investment on a lifetime should be by qualified appointment only. We'll proceed in that fashion. Notice what you're saying. You're saying, you're right. Nice acknowledgement to them. Biggest investment you own a lifetime, reminding them of the importance of the context, which should be by qualified appointment only. We'll proceed in that fashion. There's a nice little assumptive close that they gave you an instruction saying, we don't want that. And you're saying, you're right, we will comply and we will proceed accordingly. So we'll work accordingly with what you've just said, hinting that you're already starting to take instruction from them, which is the beginning of the fabric of agency. Now, on the other side of the coin, if you say, how do you feel about open houses for the public? They might say to you, well, we think they're okay. That's how we bought this place 9 years ago. We walked into an open house. They seem okay. So you're right. It can be an effective marketing strategy. Starting this first weekend, myself or an associate will have it open for viewing to allow the public to be coming through. You're saying myself or an associate, because if you're a top agent with 5 listings on the go, you'd have other agents working with you, where you could maybe assign it to some other agent. So you can quietly slip that in if you'd like, or you say, we'll be glad to start them maybe the weekend after next, and we'll be able to showcase it for people looking to buy in the area. Human nature, people like to come through properties. Nice way to showcase your property. So either way, you agree to it. Well, you don't like it, you're right, qualified appointment only. What you do like it, great, we'll have the occasional open house, to be able to showcase it to the consumer public. Now, counsel regarding house saleability at the 5 o'clock position. Now, that's staging. Now, staging obviously could be a costly matter. Usually what you see with a lot of realtors is that they will say, especially if the property needs staging, you just would say to them, yes, once you give us the go ahead, one of the first steps we'll take is I'm going to arrange for a counselor or a staging expert to come in, arrange an appointment with a time convenient to your schedule, and she will showcase what can be effective with the property and which packages are available. And the way we arrange this, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, is that you would pick which package you'd like. You pay for that package. And then after we sell the property for top dollar and the property closes on closing, I will reimburse you for the cost of the staging. Does that sound fair? So some realtors will hedge their bets by saying, we arrange a staging expert. They'll showcase which packages. You pick which ones you'd like. I could help you with that choice if you'd like. And then you, as the client, will pay for that package up front. We use it to put our best foot forward. And after the property sells, we get a sale from it and the transaction closes. On closing, I will put in writing, I will reimburse you for the cost of the full staging process. Does that sound fair? And studies show that if you tell somebody you're fully empowered, you're in the driver's seat, I'm going to reimburse you in full for that. It's all in writing. You have nothing to worry about. Does that sound fair? What are they going to say? What? I'm fully in control. I'm fully empowered and all the benefits come to me. Now, I don't think that sounds fair. So it seems counterintuitive for them to rage or rail against it because you've assured them with the ultimate warm assurance. And that's a nice way to orchestrate it, that they pay for it and that, yes, you'll get the money back, all contingent on a sale. The underlying subtext of that is, if we don't get a sale or transaction from it, I don't reimburse you for it. It's got to be on a successful closing of a sale transaction. Then on closing from the commission funds, I will reimburse you for the cost of the full staging. Now, that's generally the way a lot of realtors will approach it. Because don't forget, with staging, they charge by the month. If you haven't sold in the first month and you go into that second month of staging, you have to pay another monthly fee to keep the furniture in place. So it can be costly. You get into the virtual staging in the photographs and all the rest of it, which can be effective. But the only exception to this I find is that anytime I've dealt with boutique brokerages, luxury brands, where they're working downtown, working through Rosedale and Forest Hill, and if a realtor or listing agent is making a $48,000 commission check on a highly motivated vendor's property, then they might spend $6,000, calculate the risk up front, and not bother saying, I'll reimburse you. Some agents will assess the degree of motivation, and if it's a high degree of motivation and intent, and they know they're probably going to get 90% chance they're making a $48,000 commission payment, they'll take it on the chin and take the risk of making the $6,000 payment tax deduction anyway up front, and don't get into taking the avenue of I'll reimburse you upon closing. But you better make a sizable commission if you're wanting to take that type of risk or a challenge on it. Now, looking at these different things, you see, as far as networking up around 10 o'clock and then MLS around 11 o'clock, you can paint to them the picture that you're saying, now, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, a lot of realtors, they take a property, they put it out on MLS, and they wait for showings to take place. No, we take it a lot further than that. Once you give us the go-ahead, we'll have the videographer come through, showcase how lovely the property is. And then prior to it coming out on MLS with agents open house for that day, I will personally make sure that all the top agents at each brand, every other company, will be target marketed for receiving the visual showcase of how lovely it is. I'll send them all the color picture, the video, the virtual tour, where they can take a look at it, showcasing how attractive the property is. Because really, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, in our industry, in our business, really, in order to sell a property once, we really have to sell it twice. First of all, we have to sell it, the marketing agent, we have to sell it to the other agents in the area. Once we get them sold on the property, then they in turn will sell it to their buyers, and that's where it ultimately sells the second time. So my job is to get the attention of all the top agents in the market area, get them suitably impressed with how attractive the property is, then they in turn will showcase it to their buyers. Do you see how that would be an effective grassroots strategy? So you're once again painting a benefit picture to them as to the nuts and bolts of the steps that you're taking. So now, the sign on the lawn, obviously you say, you could try a little trial close there, where if it's the latter part of your presentation, you're saying, I thought the sign is great, high profile, over by the end of the driveway, just by the fire hydrant you've got there, just over by the edge of the driveway. That'd be a good high visible spot from the street, people driving down the street. Is that a good spot for the sign? Would you agree that's a good spot for the sign? Now, that's known as a trial close. It's a little trial question, because if they give you a yes to that, that means they've already decided to give you the listing. So you're saying, is that a good spot for the sign? And if they say, yeah, that's a good spot, then it presupposes that they're leaning towards giving you instructions and that you've got the listing. So it's an assumptive close. But if they say, well, no, we're going to have to talk about it, well, at least it was worth a shot of doing a little trial close just to see what kind of feedback you get. Now, if they pipe up and say, an objection such as, well, we didn't really want to sign on the lawn, which is rare, but it does happen still in this day and age. May ask why? Well, we didn't want the neighbors to know. You say, well, we find, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, would you agree that maximum exposure will get you maximum value for your property? Yes, I suppose so. Well, we find that the sign on the lawn is very effective as a marketing campaign because it proves two things to us. If a buyer calls off that sign on the front lawn, it proves that the buyer likes the neighborhood, or they wouldn't have called on the sign. Secondly, it proves that the buyer likes the exterior of the house, or they wouldn't have called on the sign. That means the buyer's already 2/3 sold on the property. They just have to like the interior of the house. That's too good of a buyer to miss. Wouldn't you agree? And besides, once you give me the go ahead and we have cars pulling up and showings taking place, it wouldn't be long before the neighbors know it's on the professional market. And once you're sold for top dollar, move to Oakville, does it really matter what the neighbors in your old neighborhood thought anyway? And then you can just play with it and just have fun. But by showcasing how, if a buyer calls off the sign, they like the area, they like the exterior, hey, they're 2/3 sold. They just have to like the interior. Too good of a buyer to miss. Wouldn't you agree? So that's a nice way of showcasing that type of thing. So as I said, this is where you're going through 18 to 20 minutes, painting the benefit picture of these different types of services. The thing is, now here's where it gets interesting. You see pricing up around 10 o'clock, 10:30. This is open to interpretation, but I'd like to get your feedback on this. What a lot of agents are doing now, what agents did in the past was, we would sit there and talk about our services, this chart, and then in the same breath, in the same discussion, we would bring up the CMA and talk all about recent sales in the area. So you talk about your services of how to get maximum exposure and more showings and top dollar. And then you show recent sales in the area to corroborate what kind of price you should be going for. And over the years gone by, under the one umbrella, we would talk about both fundamentals. Now, the challenge with that is, if you were to address service and price at the same time or in the same discussion, you could have it where, hypothetically, the sellers might have been very impressed with your service part of the presentation, but when you get to the pricing part, they put up this blank expression, the facade of just polite indifference and listening carefully to you. But meanwhile, when they hear the figures about the pricing, they're raging in the back of their mind, upset and agitated over the numbers that they're hearing, but they don't reveal that in their face. And then what happens effectively, they end up burning, it burns a bridge with them psychologically, and they end up throwing the baby out with the bathwater, where they eliminate you from consideration, all because you offended all their sensibilities about the pricing, even though they liked what they heard about service. So some agents I know will go through the service presentation knowing that price is coming next, but then they will close asking for the order, the go-ahead for the listing, based on suitably impressing the consumers on service. But the way they verbalize the close makes it clear that price comes next. So an example of that would be at the end of your service presentation, you're wrapping it up and saying, well, from everything I've shown you here, do I appear to be the type of realtor that could do a good job on your behalf? And that's not a close, that's just wrapping it up. And they say out of social politeness, yeah, you seem pretty good, you've told us a lot. And before they can come out with an objection, you say, well, I'll tell you what, I've got a great idea. Why don't we just go over the paperwork, fill out all the different forms. I'm going to show you recent sale prices in the area, what's happened on the market. You can select the final asking price that you feel comfortable with, and you can let me get started. Does that sound fair? Now, I'll repeat that to you. You say, tell you what, I've got a great idea. Buoyant, upbeat, positive. Why don't we just go over the documentation, the paperwork. We can fill out all the forms. I'm going to show you recent sales in the area of what's happened on the market. You, of course, and this is where you hold up your palm, reassuring them, warm assurance, saying you, of course, can select whatever asking price you feel comfortable with, and then you can let me get started. You can let me get started. In other words, they're masterfully in control. You're in a subservient position. They have to give the okay for this to get started, so they feel masterfully in control, and you can let me get started. Does that sound fair? Like I said before, does that sound fair? It's a tie down. Now, that's a nice phraseology. And they might say to you, well, we still have to talk about price. And you say, no, I understand that. But based on services, which is really, of course, what you should be choosing a realtor on, we all have access to the same resale information. These are the recent sales. If you're happy with the services I provide, if we can come to an agreement on the price to ask for your property, may I have the pleasure of representing on the professional market based on my services? And you've outlined everything to them. Then you close based on service with price being a separate entity. And you made it clear in your close that you're going to talk about price next. Now, that's a learned skill. If you feel more comfortable of bringing it all together under the one umbrella of service and price and chatting all about the different issues and dynamics of it, that's a different matter. You can do it that way if you'd like. It's just interesting to separate the two. Now, a couple of cautionary notes. A single word betrays a great design. You might notice with all my phraseology, I don't tend to use the word home very much. So when you go in residential real estate on a listing appointment, a couple of words you should refrain from using. The whole time you're there, do not use the word listing, okay? Because what's happened, anybody with enough gray matter between their ears to own a piece of real estate in the first place, if they're getting a couple of opinions scheduled for appointments, when your schedule come out Thursday at 8 o'clock, you can bet the two partners just on the lip of the appointment before you showed up at 8 o'clock. One partner's turned to the other and say, okay, that realtor, she's going to be here in a few minutes. Okay, we'll listen to what she has to say tonight, but no matter what we talk about, we're not going to be listing. Oh, no, we're not going to be listing. We just hear what she has to say. So they've coached each other about not listing. They use that dirty L word. So imagine you walk in, perfection personified, and you're doing a great job, and you're in the zone, you got a nice rapport with them, you say, shall we complete the listing? And it's that buzzword that pushes their negative button, saying, you're not getting that. And they pull back. It's almost like they've been bitten. They go, no, 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 no. So you take the dirty L word, the word listing, and you exorcise it from your vocabulary, because there are 100 different ways of asking for the order while on the appointment. Shall we get the paperwork going? Shall we fill out the documentation? Shall we get the ball rolling on marketing your property tonight? So these are the different, more warm, fuzzy sound bites that you can use. Also, when I said home, try to refrain from using the word home. I know it's their home, it's their safe haven, their residence, their castle, home and hearth, but that's just it. Even though intellectually, if you say, here's how we're going to sell your home for top dollar, it sounds reasonable intellectually, just common sense for the black and white logic of it. But some studies show that if you say to a homeowner, yes, we're going to sell here's how we're going to sell your home for top dollar, even though they know intellectually they want to sell this piece of real estate, that's just it, this piece of real estate. If you tell them verbally a message, here's how we're going to sell your home, all they can hear on their subconscious, their emotional canvas, is that they're being ripped or torn away from their warm, safe, fuzzy environment. Now, you might think that sounds a bit corny, but if there's any doubt that the word home might turn them off, you say, here's how we're going to sell your home out from under you practically. You say, now here's how we're going to sell your property for top dollar. Okay, condo, property. Property is a nice all-encompassing word, but if you say home, now don't get me wrong, with sellers, when you talk to them about your services to be the listing agent to sell their property for top dollar, you say, we're going to sell your property for top dollar, and don't use the word home. And then, of course, the next day, you, the same agent, now meeting with that first-time buyer and showing them a few properties, in your chat with them, you say, okay, here's how we're going to find the perfect home for you. You use the word home with buyers because that's what they're drooling about wanting to get, their home. So home with buyers, property, condo, piece of real estate with sellers. Never blur the two together. Now, another cautionary note. By the way, Kyle's going to send you this chart after this is over, by the way. Some of you have been in real estate just for a short period of time. It sounds good what some of the stuff I'm rattling off here, but I know here's the great dilemma. It's so perplexing. I'm going to suggest for your consideration that a lot of us came into real estate because in our emotional intelligence, in our emotional makeup, we have more than our fair share of empathy. We have a good degree of empathy in our emotional canvas, that we're really good at relating to other people and putting ourselves in their shoes and relating or sympathizing with their needs, wants, concerns, their plight, and be able to relate to them effectively emotionally is a great trait to have in commission sales. If you can really relate to people to what their needs are. But the challenge is, it's a double-edged sword. We're so good at empathizing with feelings that a lot of people, when they're new to real estate, when you go on this appointment and you go through this entire overview, at the end of it, being new to real estate, you might have a nice rapport with the people. You've seemed to have suitably impressed them. They seem to like what you're saying. And then as you go to wrap up, you know it's time to close and ask for the order, but your empathy kicks in and you think, oh, I've got a nice rapport with these people. If I try to close and ask for the order, oh, that's going to singe their eyebrows. It's going to step on their toes psychologically. Oh, I better backpedal a bit here. So a lot of newbies, new babies will end up closing up their tablet and that and say, well, those are my services. Then pack it all up to the case. Hope you keep me in mind. Look forward to hearing from you. And then you run for the door because you were afraid to ask for the order, and it ends up that you've done yourself a horrible disservice. No, believe me, they would be disappointed if you didn't ask for the order in some fashion. Intrinsically, fundamentally, instinctively, to the core of their being, nobody likes anybody overly aggressive. But realtor or homeowners want somebody marketing their property. Remember, consumers only sell a property maybe 3 or 4 times in their lifetime, other than investors. And if they only go through this process 2, 3, 4 times in their life, it's pretty heady stuff very stressful. And how are you going to get maximum dollar for this? They want a realtor. They don't want somebody introverted and shy with stooped shoulder and scuffed shoes and withdrawn, hesitant and saying, well, I think I can do it. And they don't want an aggressive bulldog, but they want somebody forthright and assertive and shoot from the hip and just saying, yes, with a type of quiet assurance and confidence that you give me the go ahead and we'll get you top dollar. So the just the sheer energy and enthusiasm. See, a lot of times new people, just by the law of vibration, have energy and enthusiasm exuding from their pores. And that takes precedent over track record most of the time. A lot of times you'll hear where a baby has vanquished a 17-year veteran. And what's happened, just to spell it out for you, is that the homeowners get two different opinions. They have the 17-year veteran come in, and the 17-year veteran of real estate comes in. It's a numbers game to them. They're well accustomed to the routine. They walk in with the perennial 10 from that third vacation that year. They've got the Samsonite luggage under the eyes, and the 17-year veteran says, yeah, and here's my track record. Here's my marketing plan. Yeah, I sell more houses than God. Push hard, third copy's yours. Okay, yeah. And the consumers are suitably unimpressed, saying, well, we want to think about it. Okay, I'll get back to you. And the veteran leaves. And then the next night, the baby comes in, hopping up and down like a cheerleader on steroids, doing cartwheels and saying, hey, this isn't just my job. This is my career. I don't want you to just be happy with my service. I want you to be ecstatic with the service. Just give me the word go and let me show you what I can do. Just say go. And they're so enthusiastic and upbeat. I mean, half the time the consumers just say go just to watch the new baby's head explode. They say, yeah, that's great. So just by law of vibration, the passion and excitement will transfer and translate to the decision maker. They get caught up in the excitement. And believe me, that goes a long way as far as replacing any type of discernible or impressive track record. Great if you have both going for you. Now, that's where you go through an overview of it, you close. What I'm recommending is that you would want to practice after today's session. You've got the text already sent to you. You're going to get this chart sent to you by Kyle shortly after this. Look it over the two pieces, but go through the text, and it's 15 pages long. You get all different paragraphs. I only covered some of it today, but you go through each of the paragraphs, and if you like what you see, then you want to read it out loud like an actor learning a script. Don't just read it quietly to yourself. I don't care if you've got a razor-sharp photographic memory. They find the best way for language skills of role-playing is to verbalize it out loud. So if you want to practice with a friend, a spouse, I mean, during these days of being in confines or quarantine, if you just want to practice it, also if you can manage even on a Zoom call, get with another realtor from our company and just practice it over Zoom, where you just rehearse back and forth, one of you being the homeowner, the other one being the realtor, and just go through. I don't care if you hold up the script and read it out loud so the words are passing your lips. If you read it out loud a handful of times, you'll have it internalized. You see, for example, back before the pandemic, if we went down to the Royal Alex to see some great stage production, and 8 o'clock, the curtain goes up and these professional actors on stage emoting. And at the end of the show, you say, what a great performance. Do you think that those actors just quietly read the script back at the hotel that afternoon and got up and gave a dynamic performance? No, you know as well as I do, they had weeks of rehearsal time where they held the script in their hand, where they're reading it out loud and verbalizing the language, the dialogue, and upstaging, downstaging, timbre of voice, staging the production of where to stand for the lighting, and be able to project to the back row so even people in the cheap seats would be impressed with the performance. Draw the analogy to real estate. In real estate sales, it's not what you know, it's what you can remember to say in time. If you don't have it mapped out for having pre-memorized this like a script and knowing where you want to conclude with at the end of your visit, and you just go in flying by the seat of your pants, hoping to free float and hope for the best, if you get steered off on tangents, this gives you a wonderful blueprint to come back online to its logical conclusion. If you get knocked off on a tangent with no idea of the agenda of a map of how to get back, it's not like the consumer is going to say, the homeowners are going to say, hey, you're off on a tangent here. Let's get back to getting us listed. You've got to know where you want to bring this to its logical conclusion. And this wonderful one-page chart will help you do that. Now, by the way, if and when you do get the listing, in an average market, see now everything sells for over asking. But sometimes in an average balanced market, if you get a listing where it's maybe starting a bit high for price, you could always say, well, we'll put it out at that price and let's have a meeting 2 weeks from tonight. I'll give you a marketing report. And when you get back with them 2 weeks later, after just a handful of showings, the language that's in your text, and you can read it at the end of the chapters where it says, My job, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, is to give you the feedback of the professional market. And the feedback from the buying public, the realtors we talk to, is that we have a lovely property here. It's a good location, but our asking price is a little optimistic for current market conditions, and we should probably look at adjusting the price. Do you see how that makes sense? Now I'll repeat it. You say, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, my job as your representative is to give you the feedback of the professional market, not just the buying public, but the realtors working in the area. And the general consensus from the public and the realtors, the feedback I've had is that we have a lovely property here, give them a nice little pat on the back. It's in a good location, nice little pat on the back, but our asking price, I'm taking the chin too here, our asking price is it's a shade optimistic for current market conditions. Talk about diplomatic. And we should consider possibly looking at adjusting the price. Don't say reduce, it's too painful. We should look at adjusting the price. Do you see how that makes sense? And then if they agree, say, well, I guess so. If they're motivated, they say, okay. And then of course you adjust the price downward. And then once you get a price adjustment downward, you contact every agent that ever showed the property, say, hey, just got a great price reduction on 38 Mayborn. Are your people still interested? So that's what to do, where you come back 2 weeks later for a price adjustment. So that's about, we're at the 1 hour mark, but I've got a full half hour where we can have a discussion and questions. Do we have any comments or questions? I'll be glad to address any issue. Oh, please.
Hi,
Please,
Michael.
please, not all at once.
That was great. Thanks, Michael. No questions so far. Does anyone have any questions? Please just type
I
in
have
the
one
text.
question. This is Aman over here. Right?
Yeah, go ahead.
So, Michael, what I wanted to know is, like, we all generate leads, and some of the say sellers that we meet first time. How do we start from there? Like, what do we talk on our very first meeting? What should be our first 2 minutes with them?
Okay, Aman, that's a very good question. Generally speaking, if you have a lead where you're in the humble beginning stages of talking to a would-be decision maker, a buyer or a seller, you ask right up front, the preamble is you say, Ms. Johnson or Mr. Johnson, if I may just ask you a few simple questions, because the more information you provide to me, the better position I'm in to advise you what your options are so that you'd be able to make an informed decision. Do you mind if I just ask you a few simple questions? So you want to get carte blanche permission up front to be allowed to probe and ask questions. You're saying, with your permission, Miss Henderson, if I may just ask you a few simple questions, because the more information you provide to me, the better position I'm going to be in to be able to advise you what your options are so that you can make an informed selling decision or an informed buying decision. Do you mind if I just ask you a few simple questions? And that usually piques their curiosity where they say, well, sure, what do you need to know? And then whether it's a buyer or seller, you've got your questions ready, a handful of different qualifying questions. It's really critical. It's a good question you're asking because, especially with buyers, it is so, it's of paramount importance that with buyers, you want to quantify or qualify to the nth degree as to motivation and intent, because if you don't scrub the lead and make sure that buyers have clear motivation and intention, you could waste a lot of time and energy running with a buyer for weeks, if not months, and end up getting kicked in the teeth at the end. Does that answer your question, basically?
Sorry, yes, it does to some extent.
Okay.
But what I wanted to really know is that, like, if I'm meeting a new seller, what apart from this, and apart from the say small presentation that you showed, there is a gap between those two things. How do I say get from this initial question to that say PPT that you showed? How do I reach over there? So what should I be asking in between?
Okay. No, thanks for clarifying. Okay, well, when you're on a listing appointment, it makes sense that as you're sitting down and chatting, you're saying, so tell me, what are your plans? Are you staying in the area? And do you have a time frame of when you'd like to be moved by? You see, instead of being aggressive, you're saying, have you bought anything else or whatever, you just say, do you have a time frame of when you'd like to have the house sold and to be have you moved by? And they might either say, no, as soon as we get our magic price, and then you know that the kids have moved out, we're empty nesters, we got all the time in the world, then they want to overprice it. That's one degree of motivation. But if they say to you, well, no, we bought a new condo down in Lawrence Park, it closes in April, and time is of the essence. Well, that's good. So you see whether they have a crystal clear idea in mind or whether or not they're just fishing and testing the water. So a few simple common sense questions. You know, when have you bought something else? Or when are you moving? Do you have a time frame of when you'd like to be closed by? So you just flesh out basic, simple intent. And then once you know that they've got the degree of motivation, then you proceed with that.
Yeah, maybe let me just share my screen
Sure.
here. I will show.
Thank you, Michael.
Sure.
I'll just show something here. I'll show our presentation, so it makes maybe a little easier for you to visualize. So
Great.
if you wanted to print this out, or you could bring it and put it on a laptop or a tablet, you can actually present this to the person, and it makes it a little easier. You can go through the slides. You can also bring up the other documents that I'm going to send in a follow-up email that Michael was adding for this presentation. But you know, you can go through this one. It looks nice. It's all done, you know, professionally. So you go through these slides here, and first of all, you're gonna tell them about your company and some of the experience of yourself and your company, and then it goes through some things about us, some technology, and and so, you know, the keys to success, pricing it right. Very, very important is pricing at market value. You know, there's a whole bunch of slides here. I'm not going to go through everything in detail, but I'm going to send this to everybody. And there's 11 slides, and you can add your own in afterwards if you like. So that would help. Just you present this to them, and you're going to look way more prepared than most other agents who are just going to go there without any listing presentation at all.
Yeah, as I mentioned up front in the beginning, I reviewed what we have for International Realty Firm, and great material. You can use it in tandem with each other, where you can use this as a template, the International Realty Firm material, and then with the chart of the one-page overview of your services. I think it works nicely in tandem with each other.
Yeah, exactly.
Hi, Michael. I just have a question. This is Ali, by the way. First of all, like, great presentation, and it's a pleasure to have you on board.
Thank you.
I guess my main question is, because I get this a lot, and I want to see how you would actually tackle this. And this is for everybody that's actually a new agent, or like is just starting out, or is a medium agent. I know you come from RE/MAX, and I know there's like all these brand names that clients know, customers know, well, whether it be Keller Williams, RE/MAX, Century 21. I get this question a lot from my new agents that say, hey, you know, when I go to my client, they're like, well, you're not with RE/MAX. Well, you're not with Century 21. How can I trust you? And I always say to them, hey, listen, you got to prove to them that you are the person. It's not who you work for in terms of the brokerage. It's you are the brand. So my question and my advice to you is, knowing that you're coming from RE/MAX and stuff, what kind of advantage and what kind of advice can you give to our new agents when they actually are stumped with those questions? That, hey, you're not I don't trust you because I know RE/MAX or I know Century 21.
Okay, it's a very good question, and here's the answer. By the way, another module that we could cover sometime is language skills, where we address all the main type of objections that you get, and this is one that happens on occasion. I find the best approach to that one is that if you're talking to a consumer that has a predisposition of being suitably impressed by big names of, say, brands, is where you say, well, Mr. Seller, I understand what you're getting at, but here's an interesting comparison. It makes an interesting analogy. If we just look away from our industry, say from real estate, when you look at other service professions, for example, the legal profession, you've got big multi-partner firms, very high profile as legal entities. And then you've got smaller boutique law firms with a handful of partners working at a boutique firm. Do you think that the multi-partner high-profile firms get all the business, or do you think that some consumers, some clients will employ the boutique law firms? And they say, well, I guess some go to the boutique. And may I ask, why do you think that they would ever go to the boutique compared to the big high-profile multi-partner conglomerates? May I ask? And they say, well, I guess more hands-on service, more maybe better for quality service, paying attention to the client compared to just being a sheer number. And said, well, we find that a lot of people feel best served by the individual, the expert that they're hiring compared to the brand name. So keeping that boutique entity analogy in mind, if you felt I could provide the best service and get you, now if the seller, the best price possible, or get you the home you're looking for a buyer, would you at least consider using my services if I could prove that to your satisfaction?
Yeah, I see what you mean. I see what you mean. I think what you mentioned, Michael, I think those rebuttals are the best thing. That's definitely something I think our agents or new agents are looking for in terms of how to address that. Because yeah, they guess I know a lot of my new agents who get stumped on that. They don't know how to answer it. And then they come to me and I'm like, well, like I said to you guys before, you are the brand. You can rely to something. In fact, oh, you're no Remax. And then they just rely on whatever they know, the pre-notion about, you know, what Remax is and whatever. Not to say anything bad about them, but it's just how do you like conquer that particular skill to, you know, tell them, hey, we are a boutique firm and we could definitely meet the expectations of what Remax can't, maybe. You know what I
Well,
mean?
yeah, and the other thing you can point out is that irrespective of which brand somebody's with, you say, I'm not faulting those other companies, but even though you know it by name, some people with those companies maybe aren't accustomed to using all the tools at hand to get maximum value for selling a property. They only have a limited strategy, whereas some of us with another brand name are employing every tool and getting maximum exposure on a property and getting a higher sale price. If you felt that we were that type of company that could provide that type of service that I've just described, would you at least consider allowing us to represent you if I could prove that to your satisfaction? See, you turn it into an academic, non-threatening question saying, not yes or no, will you use me instead? You're saying, if I could prove to you with what I'm showing you with my presentation, that to your satisfaction, that you feel that you'd be better served by having me represent you, would you at least consider our services? And usually they'd say, well, sure, if you can prove to me, who wouldn't consider it? And then that opens the door a bit more to then have a chance to tell your story.
Yeah, true.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Like people sell with people, right? So that's what Michael's saying. And also, if they're stuck on large brokerage, we're actually in the top 20. We're probably in the top 10 actually in Ontario of actual size of brokerage. I don't know too many Remax offices because Remax is just a brand name that goes over like its overview of quite a few like thousands and thousands of independent offices. So Remax is just the brand name. If you're looking at individual offices, we're one of the top 20 for sure, if not 10 largest brokerages already with 400 agents. This week we reached over 400 agents. So
Great.
That helps out quite a bit, you know.
Absolutely.
Sorry, I just wanted to add regarding Ali's questions. Sometimes I come up with an answer like this. I don't know if it's good or not. I just want your opinion, please.
Okay.
When they saying, okay, other big brokerages there, we like to list with them. I told them that, okay, the buyer doesn't look at what brokerage listed the house. They just looking at your house. And what I do, I put your house in the MLS and advertise it and bring the buyer for you. So that's why the Remax or my brokerage doesn't matter to the buyer. It's the way that I give you service and I present your house in the market. So this is what I would say, to ignore the like a brand things going on, you know. So I don't know if it's good or not. Please let me know if it's a good sentence to use or not.
Well, in all fairness, the way you have verbalized it, it's a reasonable campaign to deflect the original concern. Although the trouble is that some consumers, if they're smart enough to own a piece of real estate in the first place, they might listen to what you've said and accept it for what it is, but still think in the back of their mind, say, well, that's not what I'm asking. I'm asking about how strong your brand is for representing us to get the marketing done. So I like it where you came back to saying about what I'm going to do to get it sold. That's the important part. That's why the original analogy I gave where you're saying you've got big brand names out there and you've got smaller boutique entities in the legal profession. Say, why do some clients go to the boutique firms? It's because they get more hands-on quality service and attention to detail, leaving no stone unturned compared to these big well-oiled machines that treat it more of a numbers game. And you see how you're better served by the quality service we would provide out of our brand. And then you allude to the number that we have being top 10 in Ontario, and you have a proven track record about yourself. It's all contingent on how effective the individual is, representing the brand. And that's why if I can explain to you what I do for my service, which you alluded to, is say if I can show you and showcase my services, that it would prove to you that I can provide at least as effective a service, then would you at least consider me to represent you? So you blend all this together and it works out quite well. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Are these gonna be recorded for us and email to us, Kai?
Yes, that's correct. We're going to record
Thank
them and put them on the YouTube channel. Yes.
Thank you.
Also, in the future, as I mentioned, we'll be covering language skills as much as I can in an hour, such things as the commission argument, and we want to think it over. We have 2 other opinions to get. We're going to cover all the different pieces of language and psychology for that. Pardon me.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe we'll do that as the next course. We can do the language skills.
Okay, and then I was also, last month, we talked about doing, say, 30 top sales tips. With only an hour, I could do 30 good tips. So either that, or we can do the language skill one next and the 30 tips after that, if you'd like.
Yeah, sure. Why don't we do that?
Okay.
Okay, great.
Any more questions? We still have time.
Yeah, any other questions, guys? Just let us know in the chat or just unmute yourself.
Hi, my name is Simon. I just wanted to say thank you for the presentation. It was a lot of useful information. I actually have a question. I'm a pretty new agent, and a lot of people ask the number, like, how many deals have you done in the past? How do you answer that without looking unprofessional or without looking like you're not bringing enough to the table if you don't have a lot of testimonials under your belt?
Okay, usually, obviously, it's hard to brag about a track record if you don't have much track record to brag about. Okay, but generally speaking, when you're a newbie, which I've trained thousands of new realtors over the years, where you don't want to be deceptive at all, but for one thing, if they're saying, well, how long have you been in real estate? You could say, oh, it's my first year. At least you get the word year out of your mouth, even though it's only the 2nd week, but you say it's my first year. You say, and if they give you an expression of concern, you say, but that's to your advantage because right up to date with all the latest training strategy, marketing methods, methodologies to get you top dollar. And not to mention, I'm also with International Realty Firm, one of the top 10 firms in Ontario for the actual number of agents. And if we have a chance to allude to market share, you can allude to market share of the company. You want to envelop yourself in the royal we, the cloak of the brand of the company, if you can. But you just say it's to your advantage, actually, that to pick somebody like myself, who's newer to real estate compared to, say, I'm not faulting older agents, but sometimes they treat it as a numbers game, just sheer volume, throw up on the wall and hope some of it sticks. Whereas I'm going to move mountains to make sure that you're not just happy with the service. I want you to be thrilled with the service because this is my career and I'm looking forward to getting future referrals from you.
Yeah. And you can also mention, how many agents we have and say that you have a large network.
Yep.
All those listings get shared out through BrokerBay to all of our agents every day. So your new listing is going to get extra exposure compared to a smaller brokerage. So you can leverage the network.
Also, just to mention to you, now you may not want to do this, but over the years, I've seen some brand new agents. If you as a new agent, I know you're trying to make every dollar you can, but you're serving an apprenticeship. And during the first 18 to 24 months, if you get a hot lead and you're worried about losing it because of being new, you may want to temper your judgment by aligning yourself with a veteran agent within our own brand and sharing the business with them, where you both go together as colleagues, partners on it. And you can actually sit at their feet and learn. And over 1 or 2 or 3 deals, take it on the chin for sharing the pie 50-50 with the veteran agent, learn from their skills, and at least with them, with their reputation and track record, it'll prevail and carry the day and get the listing. And you'll learn so much by watching them in action. It'll be well worth the trade-off of the cost.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's, it's like having a mentor right there with you.
Yeah, you're serving an apprenticeship at this time, and whatever it takes to manage to prevail. And I'd rather that you get half the pie than no pie. Yeah,
for sure. And if anybody needs someone they don't know who to work with, you can email me anytime, and I can recommend some people to work with that are within our company. If you like to go that route.
Mm-hmm. So everyone listening today, do you understand what I covered in the 1 hour about the psychology of it, about where you're going through your services? That 1-page chart is very effective. So it's a cue card because you can tend to be forgetful, and it keeps you on track. And if you have the yellow rays shooting out, so it's warm in connotation visually, and it's the picture of their house with at the top marketing plan for their address, it's great because the consumer thinks, well, it's not just a generic presentation. They have fine-tuned this presentation to be a personalized marketing plan for our property itself. So it does tend to have an impressive undertone to it.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of really good tips here. So like we said, we're going to record this. We have it recorded and we're going to put it on the YouTube channel. So I would recommend everybody watch it again at least one more time. There's so much information here that you probably missed some of it, and then listening to it again, you might learn twice as much, right? So one other thing, like Michael said, it's sales is psychology and communication. It's so important. So knowing the right stuff to say, and then communicating it effectively. And when it comes to the close, like when you go to your listing appointment, here's one part of advice I would maybe say is always make sure that you bring with you the paperwork, the listing paperwork, either on paper form or on your laptop or your tablet on like a DocuSign form, so that if when you ask for the close, you have it already there so you guys can sign it. And sometimes they might want to sign it later. You can send an email to them through DocuSign later, but it's good to have it with you. And that's what your goal is, to get that listing that exact day when you go there. And nobody likes an aggressive salesperson, like Michael was saying. So a good way that you can ask for the close is when you go through everything, they like what they hear, they confirm they like everything. You can say, is this weekend too early to list, or do you want to go with next weekend? Something like that, where it's not like a yes or no aggressive close, right?
And one other thing I just want to clarify, tied into Kyle's remark, is that I was speaking in a very brisk manner over the hour just to cover a lot of information in a short period of time. But one cautionary note, we've all heard in sales that when you're talking to a decision maker that you get into mirroring, where you mirror their behavior or their pattern of speech. Please be careful with this. So recent studies prove if you meet with somebody, a homeowner, and they're speaking a mile a minute the way I'm talking in this past hour, you might be tempted to hasten your pattern of speech to match them for that pace. But please don't do that. They've proven in studies with focus groups that if a salesperson speaks quickly, even though the consumer, the would-be customer, speaks quickly themselves, their feedback after the focus group was, well, I don't like that salesperson. They seem slick and underhanded, trying to pull a fast one. They were turned off by the rapid speech, even though they're guilty of the same foible, but they're not in sales. Nobody wants to hear a salesperson speaking a mile a minute. I was just doing it here for brevity to squeeze a lot in 1 hour.
Right. Good point.
I think there's one more question.
Sure.
Ivan put his hand up.
Okay.
Hi, this is Yvonne Mera.
Oh.
I just wanted to make another comment regarding that question that was just asked regarding a seasoned professional who has a track record, so a high volume of sales.
Mm-hmm.
What you can also say is most of those professionals use a team, so chances are that you won't be getting, like as a client, you won't be getting their expertise on things. That you may be getting more like an assistant taking care of your house, property, than that professional. So
yeah,
does that make sense?
Yeah, nice tie down, Yvonne. Yeah. I like the point you're making, although being a director at RICO for 9 years, I'd be remiss if I didn't point out, you've got to be careful with how you couch those words, where you don't want to do a direct character assassination, but you'd want to flesh out within the comment such little phraseology such as, well, generally, or sometimes on occasion, what might happen is, and then you can go ahead and make your pointed observation. But you don't want to flat out saying, well, the trouble is with these big teams, you never get the top person. But you say, yes, we see on occasion that this is what might happen. And then you can do pretty much any character assassination you want.
Sounds good. Okay, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions, or did we pretty much cover everything?
Well, don't hesitate. If after we hang up today, if you have a question, don't hesitate to reach out. I'll be glad to fire back an email to or give you a comment back on it. And otherwise, next month we'll meet to discuss language skills. I'm going to cover the main big ones you get, especially the commission argument. It's the bane of our existence. I'm going to give you really credible language of how to overcome the commission argument.
Excellent. Okay, I think that's all for now. Thanks everybody for coming, and we'll see you next month.
Thanks everyone. Thanks for coming
Thank
out.
you. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Michael.
Yeah, best wishes.
Okay, take care. Bye, guys.
Thanks.